adolescence. So this is when you start really recognizing your individuality and who you are, the self. Um, so it starts off talking about how we react and behave. Like, how did we learn to be kind to other people? How did we, um, what makes us more honest and truthful? Those types of things, that the values that get instilled in us, and then part of that, whether it was instilled in us or not, is still there in some ways. And that's part of how we see ourselves, our self concepts, how we view other people. Um, Sometimes finding ourselves is a journey, and you'll see a lot of your clients, or maybe you remember yourself going through this journey of trying different things. Maybe are you a school person, like an academic person? Was that your strong suit? Were you an athletic person? Were you very sociable? All these things come into that moral sense of self, of who am I in the first place. Um, and so these are all very important stages to go through in order to end up a high functioning adult. So let's go through that. So in early childhood, you start with that cognitive competence. And I'm going to go, I've got the book with me, so I may get ahead of myself. I'll try to stay with the slides. Um, but we have the cognitive self, and I want to give you the page numbers in case you're following along in the book. Um, that cognitive part is that your brain, your mental part, your physical part, um, and also your cultural senses. You've got the ability at this age to middle childhood. You've got the ability to know like how you are about being accepted by your peers, and how to behave. Like, how do you behave differently at home versus at school, or out in malls and stuff. So kids at this age, they develop that self concept in the ways of who they are and how they act and how they're perceived in different places. And that moves a little bit different. It doesn't decrease, but things get scaffolded, things get added as they go into middle to late childhood and into adolescence. A lot of times, how a kid views themselves has a big impact on how they feel about who they are. Their self esteem, their confidence levels, if they like who they are. Um, and just like with school being a good example, if they are a good student and they get praised for being a good student, then that's a self concept about that, but it also affects their self esteem because it may make them proud of themselves. And then we have the non academic type of areas where you're talking about social, emotional, physical. Are they athletic? Um, are they emotionally regulated or not? They spin out of control a lot. Are they good socially with their peer groups? One of the things that we know about kids in schools is they are absolutely influenced by the peers that they're around. That could be good or bad. Um, and then the the mental part of this development really starts coming into play. So you may notice that you do this a lot now, but this is when this started. This is when this mental concept comes in, where you talk to yourself. Like if I do something and I realize like that I do something kind of stupid, I'm gonna be like, well, shit, Melissa, just can't believe you did that. Or I may say a lot worse to myself. I may talk worse to myself than I would ever allow anyone else to talk to me. And we do these kind of self-talks in our head. And whether we're, saying good things or whether we're saying bad things, this self-appraisal, this self-assessment in our brain starts happening and really becomes really a part of how we view ourselves at this age. And then you have a lot of your cultural ethnicity, the diversity pieces. So you may have different families influencing it. You may have your community influencing, depending on whether you have a positive experience or a negative experience. You may start noticing differences of how people are treated according to gender. This is where, you kind of start trying to find your group of people that you feel accepted by, whether that's at school or at home or community. And I think this is a really good point to talk about why, like, a lot of kids that don't have that sense of a belonging fall into uh, cult type things or gang type things or things that are just less um, that feel good to them because they found a sense of belonging, but that can actually be harmful to them and they can be taken advantage of. So, it's really important to think about how that self identity, self esteem, and their way that they see themselves is such a critical point at this stage. I am going pretty fast in this, and I want you to know why, because chapter 8 is going to be very lengthy for you. So you're going to be reading the chapters and having to process a lot of this out for yourselves, plus you're writing about it in your reflection paper. So I just want you guys to know that this is kind of a speed lecture for a purpose. So things that are also affecting us outside of that, we kind of already talked about everything on this slide. I kind of viewed that already. The moral self, kids develop different moral development, but we're taught a lot about what's right and wrong. For an example, my daughter just got on to my grandson yesterday because he sit there and watched her. He was waiting to ask her a question. He's 11. He was waiting to ask her a question about something, and she was fighting with this water hose. It was a really big long water hose, trying to walk back and forth, getting the kinks out and everything like that. And she said something to him about um, him needing to be mindful that he sit there and watched her struggle instead of just jumping in to help. And when she said that, I was telling him, I was like, that is something that our family has always had a big value in, is you don't ever just sit and watch someone work. You don't sit and just watch somebody struggle and just sit and watch. You don't ever do that. And that's just kind of a basis that I remember from being a very small child. You just don't do that. And so these things get developed into us. The thing about it is that also causes us to make these judgments of right or wrong. Now, everybody wasn't raised with that same value, right? So you may get frustrated at someone else for not doing that, but that may not be part of their value. And that causes us to also have like these irrational beliefs systems, like that's just the way it is, when that's not actually factual. Like, you might want that to be the way it is, but it doesn't mean that everybody has those same values. So these really come into play in this side, and you'll see kids going to other kids' houses and it'll be different, or they'll be like, well, that's not how we do it, because you're when you're younger, you're kind of encapsulated. As these people go out into the world, into their teen years, and explore, they see that their values don't hold true everywhere. Okay, so this is all the sources of the different theorists. I'm going to let you read that. We went over it in the previous chapters. Things that start to happen in this year too in these years, I'm sorry. Two is that ability to feel empathy or sympathy for other people. Reason out things, like process it out. Like, what do I know about this and how can this work? Um, uh, their temperament and personality really starts coming out, like how inhibited are they? Are they a reserved person? Um, Parenting practices in peer relationships. So that's when you start having girlfriend, boyfriend, thinking about future relationships, families, children. Um, this is also when some of those really key negative behaviors can get really spin out of control, when kids start coming in because they're highly aggressive. They have these outbursts. They can't control their emotional regulation. They can cause a home to feel like it's walking on eggshells because they don't know what's going to set a kid off. So this can also be a very, very difficult time for kids and their families. Okay, this is some of the moral development and how training can have an impact. I'll let you read that. Um, it's calling the ability to deal and work on self esteem a skill. Um, But our self esteem is very valuable, and working with kids and improving that self esteem, having different things that you can do to work with kids' self esteem is very critical. It's a very important part, and evaluating where they are on their self esteem is very important. So this is something you're going to really have to work on and do a lot of practice in any kind of skills that you can be able to do. That is just a great thing to have in your toolbox. Um, okay, so I'm going to let you read the application part about things that you can get, things that you can do and build skill. Putting some meat and potatoes into your toolbox. So read through this section and just maybe take some notes or think about some ideas that you can use. When you start working with kids in the field in that age, you're going to see a lot of oppositional defiant uh, personality disorder development coming up. Um, Kids are um, getting in serious trouble, maybe on probation. Um, you're automatically going to have some oppositional behavior in adolescence. It's kind of like, how far does it go? One of the things that I would always say is, just because it is you don't like it, just because you don't like how your child's behaving, doesn't mean that it's not normal. And so you've really got to weigh what's normal versus what's abnormal. And when it's abnormal is when it becomes like a mental health concern, a diagnostic issue. But a lot of our struggles with this age group is just normal, and that's hard enough. Um, so just keeping that in mind is important. This gives you some keys about maybe when a parent should ask for help. Uh, just kind of like an evaluative tool. Okay, so that's all of chapter 7. For chapter 8, you have a video link to Katie Couric's Gender Revolution. This is a really good documentary, but it's long, so maybe you'll listen to it in pieces. If your Facebook video link does not work, it's also available in Disney Plus, maybe even on Netflix, but I'm not sure. And or if you have a prescription to like satellite, you can also watch it through National Geographic. If you still have trouble watching the video in any of these areas, please just holler at me and let me know, and I'll do my best. I have a recording of it. It's a really good documentary. Katie Couric does a wonderful job. And so for the assignment for this week, again, you won't have any quizzes. You will not have any discussion boards. All that you're going to do is you're going to take all this information. This is a lot of information. This is a hard stage for all of us that have got through it. Nobody wants to go back and redo these teen years. Whether you're a parent or a family member of a teen, or just working with teens, this is a lot of information that you process on your own for yourself, as well as having to work with clients in this phase. So